everyone. Thank you for waiting and thank you for joining me. I am incredibly grateful that I get to become a part of such an esteemed audience. And today I'm going to be talking about our experience with one, our experience with one of our products reaching a level of scale. And I'm going to talk about how that experience was. Today we are living in an era where we are seeing AI products are being scaled across almost all themes, almost all parts of our lives. What happens when these products become a part of the public sector? What happens when these products become a part of a public sector in a country like India, where there is varied literacy, where there is varied digital confidence? What happens? And I think I'm going to share a story of that today with all of you. And I'm also going to share how is it that we can identify how these systems would impact users or their accessibility when it goes to them. So, identifying user competencies for equitable LLM adoption, we created a chatbot for frontline healthcare workers in India. It's called Healthvani, and we identified a method to uncover and reduce hidden competency demands that LLM assistants can put on users in order to be accessible to them. So let me first start by sharing who Anganwadi workers are. There are over 1.4 million Anganwadi workers, if not more, in India. Anganwadi workers play a critical role in delivering essential awareness and counseling for health, nutrition, and immunization amongst women, adolescent girls, and children in rural, urban, and other underserved communities of India. They also deliver early childhood education and run daycare creches. And run daycare creches where they take care of children from the ages of 1 to 6. They also are the backbone of a lot of data that is collected per beneficiary in India. So data around neonatal care, data around pregnant women, literally everything that you can imagine. They play a crucial role in the data being collected. Anganwadi workers themselves have varied levels of literacy, so you can imagine the scale of 1.4 million Anganwadi workers who are in tribal regions, mountainous regions. So they themselves have varied levels of literacy and digital confidence. Here comes in Healthvani. Healthvani is an yeah, Healthvani is an in-service assistant. It's a chatbot that allows Anganwadi workers to be able to ask questions that they have with regard to their work or tasks in a real-time manner. They could ask these questions by speaking or by typing, and I will show more about it. And they can hear the answers. So so it ensures that the system is accessible to almost all Anganwadi workers. It can act or it can complement pre-service training. It can also strengthen capacity building, and finally, like I said, it can allow Anganwadi workers to ask questions about their tasks on the go. So it allows them to type, it allows them to speak their questions, and it also allows them to select chipsets and look at some example questions when they want to interact with the system. It also allows them to, when interacting with the answers, they can read it, they can listen to it, and all of this material that we have, or the answers that they get, come from pre-validated material created by the government. So these are training modules created by the government, and the system sources its answers from that. So many must be wondering, this is something an LLM can very easily do. Why create a whole tool? Applying standard LLMs in situations such as this, which is in context such as healthcare, can be risky. It can generate inaccurate information due to hallucinations and their knowledge being restricted to static data sets with predefined cutoff dates. Hence, we have a RAG system or retrieval augmented generation system that enhances LLMs by incorporating domain specific knowledge. This is what you see. These are all the modules that are used for training Anganwadi workers around their healthcare related tasks, their nutrition related tasks. And it improves the accuracy and relevance of the responses. Um, Right. In lower literacy backgrounds, applications must be completely accessible. Hence, any AI application that is also going out there needs to be a combination of different materials, right? Or combination of different models. Sorry, it needs to have automatic speech recognition. So if I, as a user, am speaking a question into the application, it should be able to understand that. Then a translation model that can understand, so as a user, I can ask question in any language. It should understand which language I'm asking the question in, and give me answers based on that. An LLM or NLP model with prompting mechanisms. And finally, a text-to-speech system that delivered the response in users' preferred language. It sounds all good until now, but what really are the challenges? So, in a system that has different models interacting together to come up with a response, it's fragile. The issue can come or failure can come at any stage. And since rack systems rely on KB grounded or knowledge based grounded responses, there are several times when the system may say, I don't know. So that's a trade off where the system is giving accurate answers and is giving answers from these very important these pre-validated knowledge bases, but it can also give a lot of I don't know answers, and users with limited digital skills may struggle to recover. We took Healthwani to six states, one district per state, and reached out to over 628 Anganwadi workers. This is us at a training with Anganwadi workers. Once the pilot data started coming in, we understood a couple of things. One was we saw unequal adoption, and we wondered why. We saw a dip in some states, and also within those states, some users going over 50% post 3 weeks of training. We also saw, you saw all the different modalities with which users could interact with the system. So we also saw that there was a high popularity of the chipsets. You can see the chipsets over here. These are very visual chipsets. When one clicks on them, they see some example questions. So we saw almost 72% of the questions were speech or text related. Rest 28 was selected queries out of these chipsets. And each state had its own preference. We did expect that there would be several no answers, and we wondered why. So we saw almost 70% of the user queries were answered, yet 30% received no answer. This could be because of knowledge base gaps, unclear or gibberish queries, or issues with prompt and retrieval. When we did an analysis of the questions, we found that some queries, 56.2% of the queries were something that the system could understand clearly, but rest were either not understandable or partially understandable. This prompted us to look really deeper into the system because we had seen that there was an unequal adoption of the product, something that we believed to be accessible, something that the government backed, something that we believe that people would want a refresher on what they've learned before, or they would want in-service assistance. Why is it that this application is not being picked up? And we started going into the user logs. We analyzed over 100 plus user logs, and we saw some patterns. And I want to share that with all of you because these could be some things that can inform when we are deploying products at scale, AI products at scale in our countries. We saw that there were some users, a category of users who were confident, engaged, and could ask questions, and some of them could ask very clear questions. They could interact through multiple modalities, so they could type, they could use a question by voice, and they could also correct or tweak their question in case no answer came. They would explore the tool, that is, they would ask about various different themes they would ask about pregnancy, nutrition, take-home ration, all the different themes that are a part of their work, and they would, in general, show curiosity across a broad range of work-related topics. There was and they would engage more frequently, so they would engage on a daily basis. There were some who had very limited engagement, who would engage, say, once or twice a week. They also tried multiple input methods. They also rephrased their question in case they didn't get an answer. But whenever they got a no answer, they got discouraged, or they, in general, interacted in a very limited manner with the product. There were some users who asked questions in a fragmented or unclear manner. They would mainly rely on those visual chipsets or ask questions mostly using voice, and they struggled to rephrase when answers weren't helpful. Their engagement was minimal, and they usually struggled, but they were motivated. So they tried every day, but they struggled. And then there were some who only relied on the supportive mechanisms that were present in the tool. So what I'm showing you is a user log. I think going into that is going to take time, but uh, in this category of users, we saw that there was limited engagement, and they would mostly rely on the visual chipsets. They would, use the system infrequently, and again, we wondered why. Right? But we saw these were the different engagement patterns that existed amongst these 628 Anganwadi workers across 6 states of India, which itself is a large diversity. And these were some of the competencies or skills that we were looking for, that we believed that if our users possessed, these were sometimes imposed by the system, or these were some skills that the users inherently need to have when they are dealing with a chatbot. And we saw that whenever there was a mismatch within these competencies, or there was a difference in these competencies, the cohort of the user changed, right? So it became essential for us to map this, because mismatches can occur between system demands and capabilities, and that can undermine even the most well-designed tools. We use this framework to analyze to analyze in pilot Anganwadi pilot usage data. Um, Once we identified that there were all of these different categories, so we understood, I think a lot of us here are design researchers, are qualitative researchers, are ethnographic researchers. So once we, went through the data and we understood that, okay, these are the different categories that exist, but we absolutely have no clue why, it was essential for us to go onto the field and identify really why is this happening. So we conducted semi-structured, in-depth interviews in 2 states with over 20 participants across those persona groups. So we made proto-personas out of those cohorts. We also took a NASA TLX inspired workload assessment with us, so that we could understand what kind of workload were different Anganwadi workers facing. And we also took some visual tools with us. These were Now, I want to share a personal experience. When I went to these Anganwadi workers, and imagine these are members working in rural India, these are members working in some of the most resource-constrained communities of India. When I asked them, so tell me, what challenges do you face when you interact with this application? For a minute, they had nothing to say. They said, no, the application works fine, it's okay. They had nothing to say. And after a while, they would share with us that, nobody has really asked for our opinions like this before. That is why it became very important for us to take some visual tools, so that we could jumpstart the conversation, and we could together think. And this is the part where this was the step 1 of co-creation, where we gave them the mic to start talking, and we also gave them and we also took some tools with us, so that they could start sharing, do they face a similar problem? Do they face a similar challenge? And we took certain screens with us. We took visuals of certain screens with us, and each screen tried to solve a kind of problem. right? If you see the first screen, it would give some bonus questions. So, Anganwadi workers who could not think of really what can I ask this system, we took a screen like that. Anganwadi workers who may have struggled with understanding system boundary, we took some visual chipsets with us so that the second screen with us so that they could understand all the different things that the application could do. We also took a screen where Anganwadi workers who struggle that I may not be able to ask the best of questions, where it could clarify their question, and so on and so forth. We took a lot of different tools like that, and we asked them that, okay, tell us which one do you like, and if you don't like any of these, let's make one together, right? And I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce. I have Athar with me. We both did research. We both conducted this research together, and we would go with our papers and pens and these tools and literally design the screens with them together. And based on the log analysis, we created these proto-personas. Out of all the 628 Anganwadi workers, we sampled Anganwadi workers, some of them from these personas and some outside of it, so that we could speak to each and understand really what is it that's going on. I'll skip this. So this is us on field. And this is us with the tools that I just talked about. So when we went and spoke to members from each of these cohorts or these proto-personas, we call these, we've given them names, right? So there are influencers, believers, observers, and onlookers. And all of these names correspond to their interaction style on the application. So we saw that influencers, they understood the system, they could recover from errors, and they could explore confidently. They had the least amount of workload experienced. Believers, they could ask clear questions but disengage when the system system failed. They were at the they faced more load, slightly more load than the influencers. The most amount of load was experienced by observers. The most stressed group, they were struggling with formulating questions, re-asking questions, and recovery from errors. And the least amount of load was faced by onlookers because they stopped engaging with the system when they initially did not get support. So I'm going to go in depth into what we learned with each of this persona. So, and I also have some quotes. I'm going to translate them from Hindi to English for the benefit of the group here.
Sorry, you have 5 minutes.
I have 5 minutes? Okay, great. So influencers, they were regular high-frequency users. They would often use the system in order to test it. They would use it even if they didn't have immediate doubt. They would just use it habitually. They identified how it could be meaningfully utilized. So whenever they were going, a part of Anganwadi workers' role is door-to-door mobilization. So they understood that they could use the system to prepare for those mobilization visits. They on systems competencies, they also understood system competencies or what the system can offer. They understood that it was broadly able to answer their questions, and they saw themselves capable of diagnosing why the system could not answer their question and come out of those errors. Reflecting on their own competencies, they shared that they acknowledged that they would need some level of baseline knowledge even to form a question, even to interact with this chatbot. They understood that if they changed the wording, if they changed the phrasing of the question, they could get the answer, or they could get the answer that they wanted. If voice failed, if voice recognition failed, they were comfortable to switch to typing mode. And they understood very early what the system can and what the system cannot answer. So they understood the system boundary and did not ask questions that were out of the bounds of how our system was designed, which is to answer questions on the modules. What they need. So our principle is that we want to meet our user at their level. So what scaffolding would they need? They need ideas for more themes that they can engage with the system. They would want to know whenever new things have been added onto the system. They want acknowledgement and motivation to continue learning, a public acknowledgement and motivation to continue learning, and they want less errors. I think that's something everybody would want. Believers, they feel this is the second cohort, the one that faced slightly more cognitive load than influencers. They feel like it's a practical support, and but they only used it when a doubt arose, or and they did not use it in order to test the system or in order to just engage with the system or for their own learning. If a beneficiary asked a question and they didn't have an answer, that's when they engaged with the system. Used when they had mental space outside of work. So they said that we have to be at home after we finished our household chores and work and our other office related work. That is when we engage with the system. They understood when they were commenting on their own competencies. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. When they were commenting on their own competencies, they understood that they were not fully confident with using mobile phones, and they often leaned on others. They leaned on their husbands, they leaned on their children. Thinking about what to ask was a challenge for them. But they were confident that whatever answers came, they could verify it against their own knowledge. On systems competency, they understood that there was a big role of question phrasing and a user's understanding of system boundary, and they had that. They were also able to understand if the voice failed, they were able to type. Interestingly, you saw all the chipsets, right? They relied heavily on what is upfront should be what the system is, because they did not explore the system a lot. They relied on the visual chipsets guiding what the system boundary could be, and they often wondered, can it answer more? What they need is support. That why is it that they aren't getting an answer? They also need a support. They need the support of how is it that they can get back into the loop, and they need support again, which is public recognition and nudges for frequent usage. Then there were observers. Observers in general are users who interact with applications, other applications as well, in a fixed flow. So YouTube Shorts, where you keep sliding and it's a fixed flow. Similarly, tapping of certain CTAs to get a job done. So they relied on fixed flow, and their learning pattern is watch first, try later. So they heavily rely on trainings. The cohorts before this do not rely a lot on trainings, but this cohort relied a lot on in-person training to be able to engage with the system. They stopped. They again engaged with the system only when they had a long amount of time, because they knew they would have to ask their question, articulate their question, prepare their question before they asked the system, and they knew it was going to take its own sweet time. Some of the Anganwadi workers actually practiced writing their question in their diaries before they asked the system.
Sorry, I just need to flag your
Yeah.
time's up. So if
Yeah.
you can wrap up in the next minute or so, that would be
Yeah.
really useful.
So this is how observers were like. And finally, there are onlookers. As you can see in the picture, these are, just one second. I'll just quickly share what observers need. Observer need training. They need in-person training. They need support while framing and articulating questions. And they need encouragement when they ask questions. They need reassurance about privacy, that nobody is looking at their interaction patterns, nobody is looking at the kind of doubts they have. And they need to be informed about the patience of the system. Onlookers, this is the category that often has proxy users. So they would often take help of their children, of their husbands, who would engage with the system. And they only interacted with chipsets, which was a visual tool that's there in the application. What they need is encouragement to use the system and reassurance of patience and privacy that would be in the system. They require plenty of themes so that they can ask utilizing the system even if they don't want to phrase the question. And they need reassurance that their conversation is not being seen by other people, and their privacy is maintained. we saw that this was we saw that this was the most loved screen where they could see all the buttons. We saw that topic of the day was very loved, where the day could start with a learning topic that they could engage with. They loved it. The third most that they liked was when the system could help them clarify their question, and if there were any, and if the system could itself suggest some questions that they can ask. Just last screen. Yeah. So, what you can take away from this? I think I talked a lot about these personas, but when you are building your AI systems, it's essential that we identify when it goes to scale what are the hidden competencies that the system imposes on the users, or the inherent competencies that a user themselves should have. Because when we go to scale, we go to scales of millions. We do not know the different levels at which our users are at, and hence we must have scaffolding within our application so that everybody can be included. Otherwise, they would stay out of the ambit of what the solution can offer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I'm here to present our paper. I work for the local Development Research Institute. Yeah, we are a Kenyan think tank. We support efforts by African countries to take practical, evidence-informed actions to end hunger, extreme poverty, and also to reduce inequality. So we have several projects running. I am working on the Digital Public Services Project. So we work with public sector leaders and champions to implement sustainable changes that advance progress in accountable governance. So for the last year or so, we've been doing some data collection. We've had several key informant interviews, focus group discussions with relevant stakeholders in Kenya and Zambia concerning the digital services project that we're running. And so our current project is mainly focused on AI tools being used in government service provision. So far, our community engagement framework, which we are going to pitch to government officials. We hope the Zambian government can take it up. It's been well received so far. We're not yet done, but yeah, so we're hoping they can take it up. We have seen a few issues that have come up. So usually you have AI systems being embedded in all of these government services, services provided to the public. These services decide whether people qualify for a business loan. They decide whether you get medical aid, farming inputs, all of these things. Yes. So this is a big problem. I'm pretty certain it's a big problem in. Sorry, let me just close that. Yeah, I'm pretty certain it's a big problem in several other countries, but however, because we're just working in Kenya and Zambia, so I can safely say it's a big problem there as well. Yes, generally people don't know how these decisions are made, what data was used to make this decision, where they can take any complaints. Usually it's just a service given to someone, you sign up, you have no redress mechanisms, complaint mechanisms. It's very hard to get feedback. Yes. So before proposing a solution, we need to understand why the current system produces this gap. First, we have a lot of expert concentration. So you look at people who draft AI policies, It's usually designed by lawyers, engineers, um, mostly technical experts. These are highly trained individuals in their own right, but usually they are operating in ministries, regulatory bodies, corporate boardrooms. These people understand the code, but they may not understand the context in which these systems are being deployed. Yeah. So often these people would say not know what's going on in a rural clinic somewhere in Mazabuka, and this person designing this is in the capital city of Zambia, is in Lusaka, and Mazabuka is like a rural town somewhere. So it's, yeah, quite hard to balance that. And also another one of the gaps we saw is there's episodic participation. So institutions will often hold workshops. They'll release a consultation paper. There'll be a survey published online, and most of these things will be in English. The decision has already been made by the time you are receiving this information, and so it's hard for users who say are not digitally literate or people who can't speak English. It's hard for them to engage with these systems that are being deployed so that they could use them also. Yes. And also there is upward accountability. So we have institutions that are deploying systems, and then these typically they respond to funders, donors, government ministries, and so there's no way to hold them accountable for what it is they're doing. They could produce a report. Us as users will have complaints, will give feedback, but they are not beholden to us in a certain way. Yeah, so then they will just send their report to the government, and that's it. It ends just there. Yeah, so it's not a PR problem. It's like a fundamental governance flaw. So you will find this is a big problem. That I will share a link. We have a report that we are going to publish by next week. So these are some of the findings that are in the report. Yeah. So what is the institutional alternative? So we have proposed structural shifts in governance structural shifts. So this means we stop hiding the details. So we have shift number one. So we would center things on people's lived experience. So we don't hide anything in terms and conditions. Yeah, it should be easy for me, a layman, to understand what's going on. Yeah, someone should be able to explain what it is I'm agreeing to, rather than I read a whole 10-page document with a lot of legal phrasing which I don't understand. I'm still just supposed to say I accept at the end and we move on. Yeah. So there's 4 shifts, sorry. Yeah, so there's okay.
Scrolling it down. Just scroll it.
Okay, I think something is wrong with this slide that was sent. Anyway, it's fine. Okay, so sorry, we have a mismatch in the slides, but yeah. Anyway, the second shift we are currently proposing is to address power directly. So shared authority in like high risk contexts. For instance, episodic upward accountability, I already did that. Oh yeah, so we are proposing several structural shifts. Actually, that was my mistake. Yeah. So the structural shifts we are proposing, the second one will address power directly. So for example, in like cross-border data transfers, you generally find communities have no say in what happens here. Yeah, so communities are simply informed. So what we're proposing is they are not only informed, but they have veto rights for all of these processes. So if people don't like what's going on, people don't want to share their data with certain organizations, companies, entities, they get to say no. And yeah, instead of just being informed, oh, we are building a new healthcare system and we got all your data from the previous system we're using, and now we're building this for you guys. So we would propose their communities have veto rights. I need to close this thing. Okay. Can I just turn off the Wi-Fi?
I think you can just maybe disconnect the Wi-Fi.
Okay, sorry about that. Another shift here is to have response obligations from institutions. So we have complaint mechanisms, we have feedback mechanisms. I would send an email somewhere, I say, oh, this is not working for me because A, B, C, and D. And then it just ends there. The institution I might send this to is not obligated to respond to me. I don't know if they received my complaint. I don't know if they've done anything about my complaint. Yeah, it could end there. If I'm lucky, someone might respond. Most times they don't, and so it just ends there. And so we are proposing that we make this an obligation for all of these institutions to make sure people get responses to their feedback. People's opinions are taken into account when they are carrying out any new deployments or yes. So obviously this will raise questions about implementation and how does this work. So for starters, we're proposing there's 4 layers, sorry. And then for starters, we're proposing there's local deliberation. Yeah. So you would use existing civic forums. So for example, in Kenya, you have barazas. I'm not sure. Should I explain what that is? Okay, so it's like a town hall meeting. Yes, so you have barazas. In Zambia, I think it's called a Ward Development Committee meeting. So it's same thing. So you have these existing forums that are already there. You could use that, have people gather to say, oh, you explain what it is you're doing, how it's affecting them. People are gathered and they can give you feedback from there. And also, these meetings would, it helps if these meetings are conducted in the local language because not everyone can speak English. I think in Kenya, not everyone can speak Swahili either. So yeah, it would help because different localities would probably be more comfortable with different languages. So that's one. Also, there's still sort of like a literacy gap. Like I can explain something to someone and if they don't understand, they just don't understand. So to fix this is where we have the second layer. We should have community digital rights ambassadors. So these are existing members of the community who are already trusted in the community because it's difficult for me to just show up and say, oh, I'm here to help you and this is what I'm going to do for you. It's hard for me to gain your trust. But in people's communities, there are different people who, there are faith organizations, there are women's associations, farmers cooperatives. All of these people already have the trust of their community. So maybe we pick some ambassadors from there, train them on digital rights, complaint mechanisms, and having done all of this, these people, it's easier for them to also contextualize what it is they've been trained on based on the community they're going back to. So yes, it's much easier that way to have people understand what's going on, have people know exactly what it is that's happening. Yeah. So layer 3 is have multi-channel feedback systems. Again, it's about access. Not everyone has a cellular connection. Not everyone has a smartphone. Data is expensive. So we could have people using feature phones could use text messages. We could have people using toll-free lines, suggestion boxes, and we have community help desks. I know in some parts of Zambia these already exist, but it's not everywhere. So we could have all of these to help bridge the digital divide, because not everyone is able to access anything that you put up online. However, everyone is supposed to use public services, so yeah. And then layer 4 is institutional response mechanisms. I already spoke about how we want them to be obliged to respond to people's complaints, people's feedback. Yeah, so existing institutions will publish what we heard summaries. They will tell you what changed, what could not change, why that couldn't change. They would make statistics openly possible because, for instance, in Zambia, we have the Data Protection Commission, where you report any problems you have with the government digital services. However, if a regular citizen just doing some research wants to go find out, say, how many complaints did they receive this year, how many were resolved, none of this information is available. You don't know if your complaint was received, you don't know if it was resolved, and you will know if it was resolved because if things don't change, then it wasn't. Yeah, so we are proposing there's institutional response mechanisms to make sure services are improved and communities are taken into account, people are fully participating. Yes. So if these things are implemented, what changes? So citizens will shift from being passive beneficiaries to co-designers and risk detectors, because if the government rolls out a digital ID service, there are people who would know where this breaks, how it works, what makes it not work. People are the people who use it every day. It's not like the designers are people who use this all the time. Someone will know that, oh, if I have an internet interruption, this is what happens. I have to restart the whole process, or my data is lost, or something like that. So, yeah, if people are participating a lot more, it's easier to detect failure points, risks, and also it's much easier to promote ownership of these services because people will feel like they're being heard. They'll understand where these points break and what happens and how to fix these things. So the global AI governance conversation often focuses on technical safeguards and regulatory harmonization. Those are very important. However, we are asking a different question. We are asking who has a standing in AI governance. When participation is institutionalized, it's not episodic, governance shifts from expert stewardship to democratic infrastructure. All of us are taking part. All of us are part owners, and we get to protect this thing because we all have a right and we all have a say in this. Yes. And so this obviously requires quite a lot of investment, and someone might ask, is this expensive? Yeah, it's probably quite expensive, which is why we are also proposing we use systems that are already currently existing, like I mentioned the word development committees and people in all of these community groups. All of these are people who exist. These are structures and forums that already exist. So I think in working with things that are already existing is much cheaper than fixing the governance problem later on, 5-10 years from now. So it's going to require quite an investment, but I feel like it's worth it from if we started doing this now rather than fixing a governance problem 10-15 years from now. Yes, obviously ambassadors need to be trained, feedback loops must be maintained, response mechanisms must be formalized, but without that infrastructure, AI governance remains detached from the people it governs. So I'll leave you with this. So if you think about all the algorithms you use, everything that is shaping your life, who decided how that works? Were you consulted? And if you were, did the consultation change anything? Was it a conversation, or were you just told that we are going to change this and we're going to do this, and you either accept or you don't, and if you don't accept, you won't use this? Yes. So AI governance is ultimately a question of agency. Yeah. Citizens are not data points to be optimized, but rather we are political actors with rights and a voice. So thank you. This is the end of my presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. And thank you, everyone, for being here. So I have to now, I am a researcher, but I have been in the civil society space for long. So today, when I'm coming in here as a researcher, I have to step back and pause myself, I guess, from articulating the way we do in NGO and talk as a researcher. So here our problem statement for today's paper that I am sharing about is basically that AI is shaping governance, it's shaping livelihoods, it's shaping communication, it's reshaping information infrastructure, but at the core, the AI design remains technocentric, right? So that's the problem statement that we are dealing with. And here I come from Digital Empowerment Foundation. This is a 24-year-old organization working mainly in the grassroots with communities in India, 70% of which is rural, right? So that is the premise, and when we talk about anything to do with AI design, development, or adoption, we try to understand it through a community-centric lens, right? So here, there are two questions that we will be looking at. One, how can AI be meaningfully inclusive, trusted, and accountable at the last mile? And how can community knowledge, values, wisdom, and priorities shape the design, deployment, and evaluation of AI systems themselves? So why participatory AI? Because trustworthy AI cannot be delivered as a finished project. The earlier presentation also indicated the same, right? So, I mean, all our conversation, it has, we have to account for the preemptive exclusion, the hidden costs that are already there, and then focus at design level so that we don't look at it as an afterthought. So that is first. So that's why it must be co-designed with communities, embedded in social realities rather than abstract data sets. Why do I say that? Is because from our experience in India, India is an extremely rich and diverse country with different marginalities shaping people's relationship with the digital ecosystem. So when we are thinking of digital tools, digital interventions, designs to enable meaningful adoption, we will have to have those hyperlocal assessments. We must have decentralized models of execution. Otherwise, it will not really cater to the needs of the communities that we want to purposefully serve. And that means that communities are at the heart of the design, and participation can only increase then when that trust is inherently built in the digital design. So therefore, participatory AI is not an add-on layer. So it is an infrastructure, social, institutional, and ethical, on which these AI systems must be built, right? And it must be, as the previous presenter also stressed upon, it should be grounded in existing community digital ecosystems, last mile socioeconomic realities, local governance and accountability structures, community-led data governance, local knowledge systems, human and social intelligence, and vernacular, linguistic, and cultural context. And most importantly, I think, is long-term embedded community engagement. Most of us today from all across sectors are talking about AI adoption and looking at the AI ecosystem, the wide range of innovations that are coming in. But how will they be meaningfully adopted among communities if we don't have any base in the communities, right? And that kind of engagement requires much long-term work. That is when trust can be produced. So today the words that we use, safety, security, trust, responsibility, they are being used in abundance. And every sector is using it. The big tech is also using it. But what are those frameworks that define these words? Are they actually community-centric? How close are we to actually listening to what the communities have to say? How are they negotiating with AI ecosystem? So here I think two questions are: one, that when we talk about AI literacy, we almost always miss talking about data literacy, right? So as citizens sitting in this room, most of us are unsure of how and where our data is going, who is storing it, how is it being used, is it being used for commercial interests or for our social welfare? Now, what about scores of masses of citizens who are already deprived and affected by multiple layers of divides? Now, when we talk about that, we talk about social divides, of course, and built on which are digital divides. Now, when we talk about literacy also, there are layers to it, which starts with, of course, basic internet connectivity. Do last mile communities have basic internet connectivity? First question. Second, if it's there, then do we have the basic infrastructure along with functional digital literacy? Then, like, digital, of course, offers a lot of opportunities, but what about the harms that it presents, right? Even like including today's AI ecosystem. Do we have critical digital literacy? And we're talking about information landscape, how AI is reshaping that completely. And then how are citizens then tackling? Then we need media information literacy. If we are talking about redressal mechanisms, we are talking about local governance, we're talking about autonomous citizens with agency in the ecosystem of what, that they're self-aware. We need legal literacy. There are, again, like, digital is also impacting and influencing finance as an entirety. So then we need digital financial literacy. So we need to have those very nuanced, hyperlocal, decentralized models, community-led models, which we believe are layers, foundational layers on which AI ecosystem can come in meaningfully for citizens. So that's the framework through which DEF works. And in that, I want to present to you 4 case studies, I would say, or the models that DEF has been implementing in the grassroots along with communities. So one, like, at the heart of it is Suchnapreneur. If you break that word, it's information. Suchna means information, and preneur comes from entrepreneur. So these are basically rural women in their own communities become Suchnapreneurs, information trustees in their communities, and they enable access to e-governance, welfare, help rural citizens, fellow citizens prepare identity documents, like avail the digital public services, and etc. Right? And it's a huge list of digital services that a citizen is navigating, a citizen with very low literacy is navigating. And so Suchnapreneur is a social infrastructure. This has been operationalized like since 2016, and we have today 2,400 plus community information resource centers that are there in India's last mile and are operational and are being led by rural women themselves. And these centers, they work on a self-generating revenue model. So say, for example, common service centers that Government of India, for example, has. We have them deployed in 6 lakh villages. But India has such a huge demography reach that we need much more, right? So we go to those places where, say, a common service center is 30 kilometers away, 50 kilometers away. So then we reach in their vicinity, so we are able to enable that access. So Suchnapreneur is that backbone, that framework on which all our programs are designed. And then next model that I can speak about is on SmartPoor. SmartPoor model is a rural entrepreneurship based model. This is basically like, so in India, again, we talk a lot about smart cities. We don't talk about smart villages. So we don't talk about how can we have self-sustainable smart villages which can operate on their own model of entrepreneurship, right? Local entrepreneurship. So this is based on a hub and spoke prototype. So each cluster in a village, right, is anchored by a central hub that hosts the digital infrastructure, devices, and trained entrepreneurs who are Suchnapreneurs themselves. And then they are linked to surrounding spoke villages that benefit through these shared services. Sorry. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Sure. So it depends on whether we are talking about access to health, access to education, access to finance, access to credit, say, for example, if we are talking about artisan communities, it's a very specific service that a center is designing. If it's farmers, it's a very specific design. If it's persons with disabilities in the region, then it's a very specific design. So depending on what the nature of need in the village is, we have Suchnapreneurs leading this hub and spoke model. So I'll just jump to other. Internet Roshni is another model where Suchnapreneurs are working in tea garden and Adivasi communities in Assam and West Bengal. So where this focus is plantation workers, right? So there again, so they have very specific needs because of their demography, right? They are geographically isolated and socioeconomically marginalized in a certain way because they have hilly terrains, they're disaster prone. There are forest belts. These communities face limited access to markets, public infrastructure, and essential services. And that is the case with many mountain and indigenous communities in India as well, right? So that is a very specific program directed at Adivasi and tribal communities. Then the fourth model that I'm talking about is Udyamani. Now, Udyamani is a very specific women-led enterprise strengthening initiative, which is designed to digitally enable and economically empower rural women entrepreneurs across value chains, basically. So we are working in 5 states there. So the idea is that, they become business service they start to operate their own business service centers. They provide last mile business support across key value chains, right? So this involves digital skills, financial literacy, strengthening market linkages, and also preparing them for credit readiness. So anyway, so I think because we don't have much time, I'll just say that, so there are different models and programs that DF has been working towards, which are very community-centered, digital ecosystems, which we believe are definitely very good foundational layers to ensuring that we can have a participatory AI ecosystem and deal with the questions that we have as pressing concerns, especially about data at the heart of everything, right? So across the 4 case studies, the research finds out that trust in AI is socially produced, mediated through people, relationships, and institutions rather than technical performance alone. human intermediaries. We call it a phygital approach. We never call it a digital approach. We say physical plus digital. Human intermediaries function as core infrastructure for AI interpretation, use, and accountability at the last mile. Participatory processes reconfigure epistemic authority, positioning marginalized actors as knowledge contributors rather than as passive data subjects. Collective governance structures strengthen accountability through shared decision-making, consent, and grievance mechanisms. Why can't we strengthen our gram panchayats at the center of these conversations in AI ecosystem? It is not impossible, but there should be intentionality to actually engage gram panchayats in these conversations at the heart of digital ecosystem. And situated co-design improves the relevance, usability, and sustainability. Like the question that was asked, I think the onus of this question should be on the government and not on the rural citizens, you know, that what incentive does the government have? No. What incentive do citizens have in trusting the government when government is bringing these policies to us? And if it's top-down and not bottom-up, meaningful participation requires long-term institutional commitment and remains insufficiently integrated into formal AI governance frameworks today that we should address together. Thank you.